Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of ConsensusCON. This is Implementation with Intention with our very favorite Anthony Franchetic. ConsensusCON is focused on helping our customers and future customers scale pre-sales by getting the most out of Consensus Demo Automation. Our presenters today lineup include some of our top accounts as well as industry experts. We're happy to announce just a few things before we get started today. We're happy to announce that in a few days, we're going to be launching our new forum. And again, this is to help build our user community, give you guys a space to be able to communicate one with another, to discuss best practices and much more. We will also be starting a monthly webinar that will begin in December. And this is going to be focused around our current user base. So we'll be discussing things that will help you drive best practices. If there's questions that continue to pop up, new products and releases that are coming that will include additional training and resources. So we're excited for that. My name is Alex Edwards. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Consensus, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. We are recording this session, so if you're not able to make the entire thing, or if you need to come back and revisit this at another time, we will make that available for those who are registered. And then one ask that I have is we do have a Q&A section at the end of this session today. And my ask is to, for all the participants, please put your questions in the Q&A section. There is a chat button there, but if you put it in the Q&A, that'll go to the presenter and I will make sure that we can address those at the end of our session. So let's get to know our friend Tony Franchetic here. Tony is a solution consultant manager with the tax professional sales department at Thomson Reuters, and oversees a team of solution consultants that provide web-based and live product demonstrations during the sales process. Tony started his career at Thomson Reuters supporting the CS Professional suite of products as a technical support specialist, and then transitioned full-time as a technical trainer. He continues to train internally on presentation skills and crucial conversations. And Tony holds degrees in cyber defense from Baker College and integrated leadership studies from Central Michigan University. So Tony, welcome. Thank you for joining our session today and sharing some insights.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And thanks for the warm welcome. And welcome to everybody who's joining us here today.
Okay. Well, I will turn it over to you. Go ahead and I'll just stop the video here.
Yeah, I'll share over in just a moment. All right, yeah, we probably don't want to pay attention to me here either. So let's do, yeah, still got to have you stop sharing before I can get over there. There we go. Now we can get her going. Good stuff. Well, now that we've got things at least semi underway for the day, I want to take a second there to thank Garen and the team at Consensus. I know that from our journey starting with Consensus was, oh boy, we're coming up on 2 years here, and not too long. A year and a half at least at this point, and it's been a fun ride, and we've had some great success with it. So I've had a lot of fun working with Alex and Rex, and I've done a couple webcasts with Garen. So the team there has been great to work with. And I think from our discussions and what ways that we at Thomson Reuters had kind of implemented it in our tax professional division, and then since then have now moved along into several other divisions within the company, we had a discussion around what's the process that we followed, and how do we put some information together to then maybe help replicate some of that success in other organizations. So my hope today anyways is that we're going to go through a few main topics on kind of formulating how we went through our implementation and the things that I put forth to make sure that we were successful with our sales division. So we'll start with defining the purpose. So set the stage for what you want to do. And I think a lot of that was in those initial stages with Alex and Rex, and kind of just how do we approach something like this? Because at the time when we originally were looking at this platform, I had a team of 8. If anybody's seen me in any presentation before, my woeful story of having 8 solution consultants for 250 sales reps, and we were struggling for a time perspective to, it was 2 to 3 weeks to schedule the demo, so we were definitely up against a wall in our busy season, and we just needed something from the technology standpoint to kind of help that scale, and this definitely was our solution. So talking about what was our goals, and we'll get into again a little bit more on the content creation component of it. So make sure that create content that's relevant to what your sales division needs, and you want to build that to make sure and augment that sales process. We'll talk about piloting. So how do you get the right group involved early, and then build that interest internally, so you can have that rollout be successful for the entire division. I say redefine the sales process, because in our case, I didn't want Consensus to be something just shoehorned into the existing process. I wanted to kind of redefine what that looked like, and have them think about providing information to customers in a different way. So we'll chat about that. Obviously, vocalizing wins is always important. You want to continue to build engagement when you have those positive situations happen. And then towards the end of this, we'll get to a Q&A section. And I think from implementation with intention and all of my other alliteration, I think my allotment's been achieved for that part. So I guess I want to start off, and if I look at just in general, what can we do in this? I'm going to go against what Alex said, and as far as the chat part goes, but if you want to put questions into the chat section as opposed to in the actual Q&A, or my answers, I suppose, to this, like, how comfortable are you with your existing process? What bottlenecks maybe do you have? What maybe your average time to schedule a demo? So if you want to throw out there a little bit of what you see, what you encounter, that would be great. Let's see, where's my chat? It went away from me. There we go. Nobody in the chat. All right. Well, the process, and from what we defined, anyways, like I said, was scarce resources. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I think having people, when you look at your group of solution consultants, who are you supporting? How do we increase the speed to demo the products? Going to get it in the hands of the customers quicker. That's the challenge. Well, and I think anytime you talk demo automation, that's a key component to it for sure. It's always a challenge. The good people are always in demand. Oh yeah. So my team of 8, we had 2 or 3 that were definitely, at the kind of the top of that list. And when you have a sales division who knows where people are successful, they want to make sure and capitalize and get the best people whenever they have that happen. So that was a key reference for us too, is that the people that are always in demand, you run the risk of burnout. And that tends to be, I think, a challenge that anybody in the solution consultant division, when they're going to have your sales engineer. Sorry, I know that's the more standard topic or standard title for the role. But yeah, I think the resources are always a challenge. So how do we find a way to scale that resource or change up how we do things? And definitely when we look at the way we wanted to start off with this, in terms of setting the stage and defining what our process was, it was for that very same reason. The resources being a challenge, getting customer or information in front of customers' hands quicker, that's definitely what we were trying to solve as well. So the first thing, and most importantly, is define what your goals are going to be. I wanted to focus on this from the perspective of our sales division. I personally had goals of what I wanted to achieve, but when we look at like how the sales engineering squad is designed to support the sales organization, that's got to be the core focus of it. How will utilizing something like Consensus assist in the sales process? I always looked at our team as our job is to make sure that we move that sales cycle to the next stage. So how do we do that, and how do we do that in a faster way to make sure that we can give the sales reps the opportunity to get information in front of customers, and then get them in front of us to help close the deal if needed. Make sure that you set a realistic timeline. When we originally talked with Consensus on how we were going to pilot this, we chose 120 days as our original pilot timeline, because we wanted to make sure that we had enough time to build content, and we had enough time to message it to the sales division, to the pilot group we were going to talk to. There was, obviously some internal discussions that had to go up with leadership on what we wanted to do. So, you don't want to rush into it and build something out to test that's not at the level of quality that you want to. For me, I was focused on making sure that we took the time to get the right content in front of the customers. For us, and I guess a slight backstep just in terms of the history with Thomson Reuters and what we do in the tax and accounting division. We've got about 15 major products that we go through and deliver on. So for us, it was, how are we going to prioritize this? I think when we look at some different opportunities within the types of demos that Consensus offers, if you have your single videos, which we've started to branch off into more prospecting tools versus the standard demos, which are the more chapterized content, which is what we chose to start with. Prioritizing what you want to go forward with was really important. We had two distinct divisions. One of them with our tax division, which is our flagship product, so we knew that was going to be primary. And then the most important secondary product that we had to that were our start points. So our pilot really only had two demos to go forward with. When you look at what you're looking at currently in your demos that are scheduled, which demos have the highest number of overviews, the harbor tours, right? How many of those are you seeing at a common parson? Start there. And you want to prioritize with where you want that impact to hit your sales division. So for us, that tax one was the most important, and interestingly enough, that turned out to be our most successful and still is, amidst adding, I don't know how many more demos. I have to go back and look at our total count right now, but we've continued to build on that once we got past our pilot stage. The other thing you want to focus on too is just how you're going to look at defining your progress. Salesforce, with obviously the integration, if you use Salesforce, that's a key factor and it might be helpful in how do you run your reportings. But if you don't have that, and full transparency, most of our division does not have Salesforce at the moment, but we're in the process of migrating our whole sales teams over there. If you don't have something like Consensus, find a way to track what the sales using Consensus versus sales not using Consensus, because you want to have that data to really justify what you're doing moving forward with, and kind of build out that use case for the sales reps, and then to scale that up with additional demos down the road. The content component of it is really where, again, I took my first start to it. Now my history was a little bit more into training consulting, so my brain went in a different direction than maybe some sales reps do or sales managers do historically. But the first thing is, anytime that you've got that great demo that you want to recreate, I think the challenge that we always run into is don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. You're never going to recreate that perfect demo. And this is a different mindset than a normal one-to-one demo. You want to focus mainly on the selling features of those product lines, right? So you want to simplify down what's most valuable within your products, focus on that feature, and then give some relevant examples. So again, with the training background, the tell, teach, tell methodology is something that I've kind of stuck with, and I coach my team to think of that the same way when we're presenting for Consensus recordings. Is you want to start off with telling them what's important about the product, teach them why that's important. So teach is use that with a little latitude, but then tell them again why another way. There's some adult learning components to this too, where you want to make sure you tell people things 3 times to get it to stick in the adult standpoint, but organize each chapter in a way where you have yourself a little bit of an intro, you have the meat of the presentation, then you have a wrap up of sorts, to make sure that in how Consensus puts things together in the standard demos, those chapters may need to be standalone. So build a theme into that value proposition story as well. So across all the chapters, you want to be consistent with that. We originally looked at, I should say Alex and Rex suggested we stick with a 3 to 5 minute per chapter timeline. So 3 to 5 minutes per chapter. Tax and accounting software, we found we've got some a little more technical aspects to discuss a little bit. So I asked my team to stick with 5 to 7 minutes. So my 5 to 7 rule, it kind of goes in both directions. From a content creation standpoint, make sure that 5 to 7 minutes is kind of your max time per chapter, and then no more than 5 to 7 chapters per demo. You don't want to put the customer in that decision paralysis stage. And I've seen a couple where we try to put things together with 10 chapters, and looking at analytics over the timeline of rolling it out, they don't get the same usage stats as we do when you keep it a little tighter to that. And honestly, if you look at that 5 to 7, it's not a hard rule either. It's not, it's not meant to be, you can't go above and beyond that. Some of them come in and below that in the 3 to 5 minute range, and some might over that, come over by a few minutes. But, let the content that you're trying to deliver make that decision. If it's relevant, if it's still not going overboard with multiple examples and things, use it as a guideline. But that's been a pretty strong success piece for us and how we went through and implemented that as well. The other thing is, once we started to get that content out there, was to make sure that we had a list available. So if we're going to put out for the sales division, this is for their benefit, we wanted to make sure and give them the opportunity to let us know, well, what's important to you. Your sales reps are your customers in this case. So I wanted to make sure that we gave them that opportunity. And truth be told, I keep my arms around this project probably a little bit too tight. And I try and own this and define it as best I can. But at the end of the day, the content that the sales reps are asking for is what I try to keep that focus on, and just let them see the success with it. We can go back in the analytics and prove it out at a later date. But if they're asking for something and we roll it out and it doesn't get any play, well, we're going to revisit that and say why. Talk to the customers. Make sure you've got that process in place where they can request what their customers are asking for, and then we can build out and deliver on it. Okay, so another question. If you're talking about what Consensus did for us and where we were looking, our standard demos were about an hour long. So in the first half hour or so of that demo was the basic overview. So if you look at your sales teams and what they could be doing, what are some things they could do? I mean, what do you think that they could accomplish, or your reps could accomplish with an extra 30 minutes in every cycle? I know from an implementation standpoint, once we got the core components of this out there and we had our first couple, tax and audit was actually our second one that came out, our goals were to limit the number of hour-long demos that we had. We didn't know what the outcome was going to be initially, but now that we've had that chance to get out there, and if a private demo gets scheduled that engaged with Consensus prior to that private demo, they have been significantly shorter. They're more focused, usually more targeted. And so, okay, in the chat there we had ask more questions and do better discovery. Well, I think one of the things that's been an interesting part of the rollout is I've coached my team to at least encourage that Consensus conversation to take place with the sales reps before the private demo happens. And sometimes sales reps are going to adopt that and sometimes they won't. I don't think we can ever go for 100% adoption, but it's almost gotten to the point where some of my team gets frustrated when they don't. And I think because the discovery piece that happens, we're always up against a bit of a challenge. Sales reps, when they engage with the customer, they're not always going to get everything that we want out of them. I mean, certainly we want them to ask the questions, but some customers are just not going to be forthcoming with that information. And then you put a solution consultant or a sales engineer in front of them, and they start to open up differently, and they'll be able to have a better discovery conversation than maybe the sales reps are able to have on their own. So if we get that where Consensus is in front of them, they see the basics. Well, even if we schedule an hour of it, 30 minutes may be all that we need for the particulars that they're asking for, maybe some targeted questions that are left over after they see the basic overview. But we can do better discovery, ask some different questions. We're the guys and gals that should be, having that knowledge background and be able to ask the more targeted, detailed questions than maybe the sales reps are able to. So 30 extra minutes from a solutions consultant or sales engineer standpoint, you bet. Better questions, better discovery, better overall experience, and maybe even uncovering some other add-ons that we can put into it. So I think sales reps, definitely, if you look at an extra 30 minutes in every sales cycle, how many more dials can you make in 30 minutes? I mean, there's a lot that can be said for that. So, once we've gone through and make sure this has been part of our process, the overall benefits have been really positive. That's a great point, Adam, too. So stakeholder mapping, right? One of the other big benefits of Consensus has been the identification of additional stakeholders in the sales process. And I think over our first 12 months, we had something like 4,000 or 5,000 stakeholders discovered. And if you talk about who's the right people in an organization to be talking to, boy, that benefits sales as much as it does the sales engineers. sales reps are going to be engaging with that, maybe it's the door opener, the sales manager, whoever it might be, and you get the partners involved and finally know who they are and get the information in front of them, that cuts down on how many other future conversations that you need to have to get it in front of them. So yeah, definitely figuring out what the organization looks like, who are the true decision makers, and making sure that you target communications to them. You bet. So anytime that you look at just the volume of demos that are being done, 30 minutes for every sales cycle can add up to be a hefty amount of time for sure. All right, back to kind of the goal setting component of it. If you're going to run a pilot, what is kind of the accomplishment that you want to achieve there? Is it determining ROI? Are you going to look at what is the overall time spent delivering private demos? Are you just trying to get more information to customers? So if you're going to run a pilot, then your goals for that initial pilot may be different than your overall implementation. So I look at this, and I've kind of run multiple pilots. If you look at our organization as a whole, the tax professional division took it on, and we ran our own or our own pilot for the platform to start. But then since then, with multiple other divisions within TR and overseas, I look at every little initial or additional rollout to be another pilot, and I got to look at it from that perspective and ask what their goals are. What are they trying to achieve? If you look at our sales team, and if your sales team resembles ours in any way, resistance to change is something that you'll be faced with. I know ours are a little challenged sometimes to open their eyes to a different process, but what my goal was with that smaller group was I wanted to get a group smaller in size, more tech savvy. They were going to be hungry. They wanted to, they're already good reps, but they're always doing, above and beyond. I think we started with 12 and gave them the initial access with those 2 demos on our popular products, and we let them go. We wanted to keep them segmented away from the rest of the sales division, and we kept them that way for 30 days. Now, luck have it for us, our first two demo boards that were sent out resulted in sales of our tax solution that didn't require a private demo. So with our first 2 deployments, we got really, got the ball rolling, and the rest of the next 30 days were just a clamoring for the rest of the sales team to get off and adopt this new platform. Because in the past, we went through, and from a sales leadership standpoint, we looked at what we had. We found new tools and new technologies and said, hey, this would be really great for the auto dials or whatever it might be. And we'd roll out to the whole floor, and there would be like 50% adoption. And we knew that we didn't want to have that. This is an investment we were going to make and try and change the process of what the sales cycle looked like. Then we wanted to have a higher adoption rate, and doing this kind of smaller group and showing the initial success and then rolling it out wide to the rest of the floor, that excitement that built in those 30 days has gotten us to a point where there's a handful of reps that don't do it consistently, but the majority of the floor is definitely using this to its entirety. From a training perspective, I would definitely say that Alex and Rex were instrumental in this. We built out a training process. We looked at how do we roll this out initially. I believe it was Rex who did it, or maybe it was Alex who did the initial training with our sales reps. It was virtual, and then they did come on site after we've been using for a bit and did some additional Q&A and opened it up for what they could do to help with us. But definitely the training of the sales floor is going to be an instrumental part of that pilot too. So in the midst of all the things that they're looking to do, how do we get them to use this tool effectively and follow in the way that's going to be most successful? Alex, I guess I'd ask you too, like anything that you'd add about how working with the Consensus team can help further the success of an implementation as far as training goes?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's been really beneficial is you guys have taken what we've given as kind of a baseline of what the training should be, and then have started to mix it into your own TR, world. And we're seeing more and more companies do that, where we're happy to provide the training, but where we find the most success is when we can deliver the training to someone who's going to take the lead internally at the company. And then from there, they can then put the spin on it, change it into the language of the reps, what they're used to. And they just kind of build off of what we have. So I think you were one of the first who recorded the session and then put it in and made it available to your reps after the fact. So in terms of us doing training for your team, it was really simple for us. We just did that initial one and then it was able to be reused. Now we're trying to take more of a train the trainer approach where it can be translated into the user license. But that's my 2 cents on the training aspect of it there.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and I think too, anything you can build that's you can replicate, you can repeat over without having to utilize your team to do that ad nauseum, then the benefit is there. And that's a lot of just best practices, and we found things similar with even internally, like for the solution consultants or whoever your knowledge experts are that are doing the recording, even just best practices for Screencast-O-Matic and what to do, or if you're using Camtasia or whatever your screen capture recording is going to be, make sure and give those same level of tips and tricks to everybody so that whatever that additional rollout or pilots are going to be across an organization, you want to replicate the success you had by modeling what you did. I think lastly with that too is feedback. And this is one thing that I found that sales reps don't like to give constructive feedback, I guess. And we ran into this when we first started transitioning into more of a consultative role with the sales division, is that nobody wanted to say what went bad. They were scared we were going to come back and do a poor demo for them, which was really silly to me. But from a training perspective, I never was able to improve as a trainer unless I had feedback to build off of. So to me, when we first sent this out and have our even every recording that we send out now, every new consensus demo that's done, I have that open feedback loop because I feel like it's an essential part of the process. The platform itself allows for easy updates to the product. I mean, you can pull out just a single chapter and re-record it if something changes. If you've got a new feature that's there, you can plug it in and just add the chapter, you can reorder things. But listen to the sales team and find a way to let them provide those suggestions and notify you of what's working and then what isn't working. Because if we don't know, we can't make those adjustments. We can't change to benefit the team. We've got more than a year under our belt now. And I think once we get into our January kind of slow season for us, I'm going to be doing a lot more of the analytical reporting and saying, okay, well, of what's been watched over a year's time, what chapters are least selected, and then try to do some digging. Well, why is that? Talk to customers, talk to sales reps, and figure out. So the ability for those reps to then communicate what works and why has been a big key piece for us as well. Well, I mentioned it earlier, but a little bit of repetition, right? If you think about reps resisting change, my always gut is like, well, why? What is it about their process? They find something that worked and they just don't want to. They don't want to do that. They don't want to change what they're doing just because they're comfortable with how they've always done it. To me, I wanted to find out what was the core issue that they don't want to change, and then overcome that with the data from your pilot. Right? If we were able to say that reps that use it successfully were able to turn around and close deals, 30 days faster, that's got to be one of the number one things that you can turn around and say to your veteran sales reps who don't want to change anything. Like, man, what could you do? You want to close deals a month faster? Here's a simple way to do it. It's got to be the buy-in for the content though. And from the chat standpoint, you're exactly right. If they don't like the content, there's no way that they get it out there. Well, it goes the same way with resisting change. If they don't see a benefit, if we can't prove that it's going to help them, there's no way that they're going to adopt it and then use it out. So slight aside on the joke, but right, that's the sales rep's mindset. They might not be fully, but they might be a little stitious, not superstitious, just a little. Anytime you talk about changing process for sales though, I don't know that anybody would run into a situation where they don't have some reps that will just resist at all costs. I had a couple of people that just, I tried to have some candid conversations with them, and I've been working here for 20 years. What do you're not going to change how I do things. Who are you to come in and say this? Well, at the end of the day, it's their quota. They've got a number to hit. They're going to work to try and achieve that number. And I understand. I don't want to cause problems for anybody, but the end of the day, my goal is to benefit them. So I guess the challenge that I look at is, how do we give them every reason possible to want to change their process? And while it's a tall order, I think, again, depending on how you're going to run that initial pilot and implementation and have the data to turn around and look at it, it's maybe a challenge, but it's not impossible. This stage, I think, in terms of redefining the sales process was probably the harder part for me, because historically, the sales process, sales reps looked at a private demo as the tried and true way to close a deal. Get them on the phone, sell the demo. And then the sales engineers come in and they do their magic, right? And that was what was helping them go through to close out the deal. And if that sounds familiar to you, that's exactly what we went through. And for what I had dealt with coming into it, I took over the team 5 years ago at this point, and I had, since that point, 3 or 4 of my top producers burn out and leave. And I think that's one of the hardest things, and I wish we could have adopted sooner, because I see now this kind of breathing room with the rest of my team when Consensus is adopted. I think how do we change how a rep presented information about products to a customer? So I think that's the number one piece with redefining the process. And if we still allowed sales reps to have a private demo be the only way that we get stuff in front of customers, you're not going to change that process. I had to look at, well, if this Consensus platform and if these recorded content, the sales or demo automation was able to get that in front of them faster than we can schedule it, in front of more of the stakeholders at a time that was convenient for them. Those are some of the things that really started to open the eyes of those sales reps is at the time when we were looking at 2 or 3 weeks to schedule a demo, well, I can't schedule that, but this is what we want to do is adopt this process where you're providing some of that initial overview content earlier in the sales cycle before you would traditionally schedule a demo. That was then starting to shift where that need for a demo happened. Because if the demo is the way they close it, and you have sales reps kind of creeping that number back in your sales cycle earlier and earlier, because as long as you can get them on the phone with a sales engineer, then they'll work to close the deal for you. Well, we want to make sure that we're qualifying and getting the right customers and getting those detailed questions ready, so that when we get to a sales engineer, they're able to capitalize on it. They're able to take that and really drive it home, so that you can have that buying decision right at the point of the close of the demo, as opposed to maybe a second or third demo that's needed, depending on what questions arise during the overview process. So it was taking that and defining it in a way where if Consensus was used earlier and they get that harbor tour at a time that was convenient in front of multiple people that may not be able to be in the same room at the same time, that was the first step. And if that, for me, changing that made deals close faster, that just was all the better. I mentioned earlier shoehorning this into the existing process. If you don't position how that content is to be shown, it's not going to work. Actually, there's a couple reps that we were challenged with initially that scheduled a private demo, and then they sent the customer a Consensus demo and say, "Oh, hey, watch this before the demo." How do you think that went? I have my one real good story on that. I've got one of my guys, deep voice, like radio DJ voice, really well for the recording for the Consensus demos, and he had recorded the content and he got scheduled for the demo. It was this exact scenario. They scheduled a private demo. They sent him the Consensus. They did watch it prior to the demo, but there was no communication that went back to the sales rep before the demo. So we get on, and my solutions consultant came in there, and it was his voice going in to do another overview demo, and it was a replication of the same content the customer had already heard. And I think that was kind of our example that we use for how do we change this process. Well, you don't want to have time wasted for the customers. We want it less time in front of them and more valuable time. So what ideally we would have happen instead is that Consensus demo takes place before the private demo is even scheduled, because it could be enough to make sure that buying decision happens and they don't need a private demo. And if they do, great. Now we know it's not going to be a harbor tour to try and discover what's wrong. They've already self-identified what some of those things are. And that was a key piece for us, for reps that were using it incorrectly of, well, you really want the same voice that's on the demo to go through and do another one? They've already heard it. So what do they need? What's more important? We did not run this initially and incentivize it, to be honest, because our initial success kind of proved itself out. But some of the other divisions within TR did some gamification to things. They incentivized that rollout. Whoever Whoever sent the most demo boards in the month got, I don't know, a gift card or a prize or something out of it. Whoever had the highest deal close, the highest dollar amount deal close without a private demo, whoever had the most content created, so involving the knowledge experts in that process as well, and give them an incentive too. But anytime you give sales a goal and incentive to do it, things typically go a little better. Anybody who had a successful rollout, did anybody else use incentivizing the sales reps to adopt it? Maybe another area that you guys had seen success with. I know our one division, they created kind of a weekly newsletter that kind of highlighted the successes, and I think that's, obviously with the success piece, I'll talk about that in a minute. But it gave kind of the leaderboard of who had the most deals out there. So if it was in a month's timeline, you just get that information in front of them, throw it out, and let that competition that's a natural sales rep mentality take place, and let them compete against one another, because who can have the bragging rights that month of getting whatever the deal is, or at least getting their name on the top of the list. Reps are motivated by incentives and by competition, so find a way to put that into your process and make sure that it's there. I think the types of demos that are there is, I guess you want to consider how you're using this. And I mentioned earlier with the single videos, prospecting has been an area where we started to branch off and do things a little bit differently. And I think you want to make sure whatever the value or the goals that you're trying to achieve, you want to align the demo types that are out there for it. Like, because there's the advanced type, where you can start with a question track, and then that feeds them into a standard demo with the chapters to choose from. Well, that might not be the best way to roll out and do your pilot, because they may not understand what's the value of that. If it is that we just need to get more people on the phone, or more people seeing the content to gauge interest, well, maybe that prospecting piece and the types of videos that you're creating are the way to go. You want to have more of a teaser, more of a commercial in that single video format to get out to a broad audience. I think the way that we initially had rolled that out with the standard demos was designed to be in an active sales conversation between a rep and a customer. And that was how we engaged and got the content in front of the buyer at that point. So the standard demo was not something we wanted to broadcast out to multiple people without context, because they may not know what they're seeing yet. So while there are great options there with the 3 different types, you want to consider how you're going to use that in the sales process. So our kind of second rollout, if you will, was those prospecting videos to be used and integrate with outreach and send out in kind of more in mass, but they're teasers. They're not depth of content. It's not a bunch of value propositions on features within the program. It's a high level, what does this do for your business? And that was the virtual hand raise that the sales reps are able to then use and then take to the next stage, which in some cases could be a standard consensus demo, in some cases could be a private demo. But using those videos in different ways in the sales process was also an important component for us. Most importantly, right, you want to have the successes screamed from the rooftops, and anything that you can do to get those wins out in front of the sales division, the better. So, anytime you've got sales reps going back to kind of the competition mindset, if somebody's using it and they're having success with it, and somebody else is using it and they're not, well, they're going to start to initially talk to one another about what do they do differently. Are they messaging, communicating that differently in the initial email that they send out? Are they positioning it differently in their sales conversations on the phone? How are they going to do things to make sure that they can replicate that success of others in the sales floor? Because, man, if they can do that and win those deals faster, it'll spread across the floor for sure. I mentioned the newsletter. That was something too, where those wins, like it was the top wins were always referenced, the biggest wins that were out there were referenced. And it was really a simple put together of, once a week, put together a couple of bullet points and a list, give it a banner and call it a newsletter and ship it out to the sales floor. Just get it in front of them. It also gave you an opportunity to get what's coming, right? If you're building content and you've got a timeline of what's coming next, get them excited about what they're able to send out to customers for the other product lines that are there. That best practices even, we strayed away from doing a form email with the videos as they're sent out, because I wanted to make sure that we didn't take the personalization away from it. The reps know the customers better than I would in a consensus demo creation. So I wanted to make sure that how they communicated that to the customers was on them to do so, and that's proven well for us as well. But lastly, I think that the thing to be mindful of is it's a challenge to break habits, right? And I'm not saying that any habits are bad that are already in place, but if you talk about a sales process that somebody's familiar with and they're comfortable with, that's a hard thing to do. So while we may not have that initial win come through in the first, even couple of weeks, don't take your foot off the gas. Psychologists say it's 21 days of conscious and consistent effort to create a new habit. Well, that's an eternity in the sales world. So when you're rolling this out, if you don't see that initial success with it, just keep the pressure on, keep creating content, have your feedback loop that's there. It's longer to break existing habits that are in place. So the more that you can kind of put things together and really align yourself for staying positive in front of the sales floor and creating content that's relevant for them, that's to me the best way to approach forward. So that was our kind of long and short of where we rolled out. I had made another slide and I ended up taking it out of just some of our statistics, but I know one of the things that we had looked at initially was what is the usage going to look like when we're slow? So our selling season kind of aligns with the tax season, obviously with tax and accounting software. So we have extension season. The whole year was messed up, obviously, with COVID and the timelines and the tax deadlines being delayed and everything. But we still had significant usage in our slow months. We're most busy. We keep a pretty high mark too. But in our 12 months when we rolled it out from September of last year through this year, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 demos that got sent out. It's about a 40% open rate across the board, which, a 10-minute overall view time. We've seen that kind of success hold steady over the full year. And it looks like for Q4 this year, we're kind of tracking along the same lines. It's one of those things where once we had that success initially, we've continued to build content in much the same way that we originally did, really focusing on what was important to get out in front of customers, align it with your marketing resources, making sure the message is there. If you've got proposition statements that are there for the sales division, make sure that you're building that stuff into your content. It's just anything we can do to have consistency of messaging and then getting that information to customers in a meaningful way. So for us, that was our kind of key references, our benefits long-term, and definitely wanted to be able to post it up. I probably should open up the Q&A. Alex, did you have anything that was out there?
Let's take a look here. I think everything was submitted through the chat for the most part. So any questions from the audience that you want to throw in the Q&A while we have a few minutes here at the end?
And one of the things that I do get pretty consistently is who creates the content. I've leaned on my solution consultants to do it just because they've got the examples to pull from with firms that they've worked with. We have teamed up in some instances with our product division if there's going to be new functions, new features, new UI, something that's going to be changed, and get that information from them. But again, because they get comfortable with how we're creating content in this way, that they're my typical go-tos. I know while my division has not, some of the other divisions have started to use the sales reps creating their own intro videos. So it's them a little bit more personalized. So they have a little video intro to kind of set the stage for the customer, and they personalize those. That's been kind of a newer thing that I've seen getting a lot of traction as well.
Yeah, and there will be it's funny you mentioned there's going to be a session tomorrow about product releases coming down the road, and there's a new feature. I won't spoil it, but there's a feature coming in the near future that will make that process even easier. So we're really looking forward to that. Well, appreciate the insight into this, Tony. We've seen incredible things with Thomson Reuters and just the way that you've rolled this out for all of the groups within your organization. It's been a very smooth process. I'm sure on our side it's been smooth. On yours, it's been going through and working like a madman there. But we're really excited about having your insight here and sharing this. A couple of things to plug really quick. We will have, for those who are interested in this same topic, we will be hearing from another speaker tomorrow. Adam Freeman from the Access Group is also going to be sharing some insights into implementation. And we wanted to get as much as we could, or a lot of feedback from current clients about how they rolled implementation out. And these two, Thomson Reuters, what Tony's done here and what Adam's done in the Access Group, have really been best use case or best scenario for implementing consensus. We've seen them launch incredibly quickly. And so that was why we kind of, picked on them to see if they would be interested in joining the session. So that session is tomorrow. And it will be it's a second session. So it's the same time as today's session, just tomorrow. So please, if you're interested in this topic, feel free to join that session as well. I will also just share with you what's coming down the pipes here for the next two sessions. So we have at the 11 o'clock hour, so just in about 15 minutes here, we will have a presentation from Andy Paul, which is the speed to discovery is speed to influence. And then we're going to hear.
There, Alex?
What's that?
You want to share your screen?
Oh, am I not? Can you see it okay now?
Oh, there it is. My bad. Yep, now I got it.
Cool. So yeah, the first one's going to be speed to discovery, speed to influence with Andy Paul. And then the second one will be from our own Taylor Jeffrey, who's an account executive. He's going to go through how he uses the tool in his day-to-day to sell. So we hear a lot on the pre-sale side, creating content, rolling things out. Now we'll have a chance to hear from a couple of sales, one sales expert in Andy Paul, and then another account executive from Consensus. So please feel free to join us there. The links are at ConsensusCON website if you don't have a way to get in there, and we will look forward to seeing you all in a few minutes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, team. Have a good day. See everyone.